moderator for the next 45 minutes. I am pleased to introduce Nas Zahir, a program director at the National Cancer Institute, as the presenter today. The format today includes a short presentation followed by Q&A with the presenter. During the presentation, we have Q&A staff to answer questions in the Q&A box. So let's get started with Dr. Nas Zahir.
Thanks, Paula. Like Paula said, my name is Nas Zahir. I'm in the Cancer Training Branch at the Center for Cancer Training at the NCI, the National Cancer Institute. And I'm really pleased to be presenting with you today. I want to start out with a poll, actually. So in the chat, I believe there will be a question about what is your career stage? Is it, oh, here we go, move that, undergrad, graduate, or doctorate training? Are you a postdoc after your PhD or MD? Are you in residency? Are you an early career investigator? Did you just start your faculty position? Or are you an established investigator? At the NIH, we consider that if you received your first substantial award from the NIH, then you are now an established investigator. So congratulations. So I do want to take a moment and allow you to respond. I see there's over 200 participants here today, so that's fantastic. It's wonderful to have you all here. So we'll give a moment for that as I go to the next slide, and then I'll touch base and back with you when we have the results for that, and we'll go to our next polling question. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about where I'm from in the National Institutes of Health. So I'm actually in the National Cancer Institute. As I'm sure you've heard in many of the presentations at this seminar, there's over 27 institutes and centers at the NIH, and NCI is one of them. Our director is Ned Sharpless, and I sit here in the Center for Cancer Training. I actually just started as chief of the Cancer Training Branch 6 months ago. But before that, I was a program director for about 11 years in the Division of Cancer Biology, where I had a portfolio of technology development grants in my portfolio that were around developing microfluidics devices, for example, for understanding basic cancer biology processes. So I've interacted with a lot of principal investigators and trainees through programs that I've run in the Division of Cancer Biology and now in the Center for Cancer Training. And so I sort of want to utilize that experience that I've had here at the NCI to give you some tips on moving forward with your own career. So let's actually get the polling results. If we have the polling results, if I'm able to see those, that would be fantastic. So we have 57% are early career investigator, and 9% are established investigator. And then we have 21% postdocs or residents, and 8% grad students, 5% undergrad. Fantastic. It's a really great, great group of people. So this is perfect because now I know how to kind of tailor my talk and what I'm going to talk about. And so for early career investigators, I realize you may not have a substantial R01 grant yet. So I'll tailor my talk there, but it's actually kind of perfect because some of the things I'm saying, I think for an established investigator, you may already be doing a lot of these things. So what's really important is leadership. In your position as a faculty member, in your position even as a postdoc, being a leader in your laboratory and leading those around you, being a good mentor is fantastic. You want to generate ideas, obviously, for your research so that you can submit these ideas to the NIH for funding. And so one of the things that I've actually learned personally through my career within the NCI, but I realize this is very important in any career, and particularly in the laboratory, Seek leadership training. If you have the opportunity at your institution, seek leadership training. If you have the opportunity and time to set aside to read a book such as this one, At the Helm, Leading Your Laboratory, that's something that's really useful and beneficial for yourself and for those around you who you're going to be working with. I want to pause here before I go to the next slide and do another poll. And this poll is around what is your, if you do have an NIH award, what is it? So if I could cue that poll. So do you have a fellowship currently? Do you have a mentored career award? Do you have an R01 or U01 or any other R01-like substantial award? Do you have an R21, R01, or sorry, R21, R03, R15? Those are the smaller awards, or any other type of award. So I'll give you a few minutes to answer that poll as I move on to the next slide, and then we'll check in with the results. So let's move to the next slide. So develop a leadership philosophy. So for you early career investigators and for postdocs, what kind of leader do you want to be? Think about how you want to be authentic. Do you want to have some really positive energy? Be accountable for your actions, be decisive, listen and follow through, and be a visionary. Are these some, look at this list and there's probably many other things that you can think of that are important to you as you develop your own leadership philosophy. So think about what are your core values as a scientist, as a researcher, as a mentor, or a future mentor, if you will. So, and what is it to be a good mentor? Obviously, everyone's had their own experience, except for maybe, some of the undergrads, perhaps you do have some research mentors, but you may want to emulate yours. Obviously, if there's fantastic traits that they have, you would want to emulate those. You want to suggest directions to your trainees, provide feedback and provide praise, constructively and constructive criticism. Consider the individual and their own needs. Everyone has different needs. Look for growth opportunities with the individuals who you are mentoring, and make it clear that you are not an equal, but you are there to provide the mentorship and the guidance that they need. So think about when you're thinking about being a good mentor, one thing you can think about is how could you have been helped when you were in the position of that trainee? There's certainly ways, nobody's perfect. There's certainly ways in which our own mentors could have improved. So think about that and how you might want to utilize that information in how you develop your mentoring strategies. All right, before I move to the next slide, I'm going to check in again with that poll, just so I can see what type of awards that everyone has. So, okay. So this is pretty equal across the board, meaning 13% of the participants, now we have over 300 participants right now, 13% have had a fellowship, 21% have had a mentored career award, 23% have an R01 substantial award, 20% have an R21 or R03, and 23% have other. So, okay, fantastic. So we have a good range of different awards that everyone has had. Congratulations. That is very awesome. And for those who have fellowships and career awards, I really hope that that funding will encourage you to continue in your research career. Okay, one note about progress reports. So on all of those awards that you have, you're required by the NIH to submit an annual progress report. Do you spend some time on that? do not spend a lot of time agonizing over it, because it really shouldn't take, more than a week to prepare. It should only take a couple of days. And of course, it takes longer to prepare the larger your award is. So if you're part of a really big center grant, for example, a U54 or a program project, those progress reports are going to be very long and take a long time to prepare. But the message that I want to provide is that us as program officers at the NIH, we really do read the progress reports. So we really do look for how you're progressing. We look for red flags. Is there an area that you're having trouble with? And then if we do see those red flags, our job is really to try to help you to try to mitigate and try to alleviate those challenges. We may talk about whether you need an administrative supplement, for example. COVID, obviously, the situation with the COVID-19 pandemic has been very challenging. We have been reading the challenges that you have been writing about in those progress reports. So please do continue to communicate that with us, and we really do appreciate it. So then also, as you go through and you continue your research and you've got some results, ask yourself, well, where did the data lead? Where are you going to go with that data? How are you going to present that data to your peers in the community? How are you going to present that data to the NIH if you decide that this could be really great data for preliminary data for another grant application? So think about how you want to get there in terms of where you want to go with that data. Take time to chart your course. So think about do you need funding to pursue that data even further into the next idea? Do you need collaborators? Do you need more staff? Do you need different equipment? Do you need to look at your department and ask them for shared equipment? What resources do you need? So if you think about funding, obviously the NIH has many different types of funding, and that was evident in your response to the poll when you described what type of research funding that you have. Well, we have programs to help prepare the skilled, creative, and diverse biomedical research workforce of tomorrow, whether you are an undergraduate, pre-doc, postdoc, early researcher in your career, or established investigator. And so the NIH website is a useful resource to help find this information. You want to choose an appropriate path for funding. So when you're a postdoc, or a pre-doc, you can obviously apply for fellowships, or you can be a trainee on a training grant, like a T32 that's at your institution. And you can ask, whether you're ready for independence. If you're ready for independence, you can go down a path of the Early Independence Award, for example. Or if you're not ready for independence, you could go into like a postdoctoral, a mentored award. So a postdoc fellowship, or you could go into a pathway to independence, like a transition award, like a K99, or a mentored career award. If you're ready for independence, you may have to ask yourself, do I have enough preliminary data? Those of you who have R01s or other equivalent awards know that it's really important to have substantial amount of preliminary data to convince reviewers that your project is indeed feasible. And so if you don't have that preliminary data, you may need to look into other awards. A common question when you already have an R01 award or an R01 equivalent substantial award is, should you be thinking about a competing renewal application, after a couple years go by, or should you submit a new application? Well, this is a really interesting topic because competing renewals, it's been shown at the NIH. In fact, if you look up some blogs by Mike Lauer and other leadership at the NIH, you will see that competing renewals have better chances of success overall over new applications. However, I've had a lot of conversations with different principal investigators, and it's often the case that after a few years, your research paths the data will kind of lead you to a new direction, perhaps. And it might not make so much sense to submit a competing renewal. You might be really excited about your new data and want to submit an entirely new application. And that's perfectly fine too. So these are some conversations that you can consider having with your peers in your departments, your colleagues, as well as your program officer. If you have a draft of an AIMS page or even an abstract expressing your ideas of this project and how you've conceptualized it, then you can discuss with your program officer, does it make sense to submit a renewal application, or should this be an entirely new application? So you want to make sure that, if you do submit any application, that you're selecting the right funding opportunity. And so the NIH grants.nih.gov has a find funding link. And at that link, you can search by keywords. You can search by institute. There's many different filters that you can use to find different funding announcements. One note that I put on this slide is that NIH in general is moving away from issuing many different program announcements into issuing more NOCs. So NOCs are notices of special interest. And what that is, the intention of a NOC is to signal to the community that the NIH is interested in a particular area of research. So for example, in cancer research, we're particularly interested in the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning and deep learning into approaches for predicting cancer occurrence, for example. I'm just giving that as an example. Well, we would issue a notice of special interest, and then in that notice, we indicate which funding mechanisms are eligible for that specific notice. So in your application, you need to indicate which notice number you're responding to when you are applying for that R01, for example. But you don't have to respond to a notice of special interest in order to submit an R01 application. Another fantastic resource, which I'm sure if you've attended other talks at this wonderful seminar, you've probably seen this slide, but I think it's worth reiterating that the NIH Reporter is a really fantastic database where you can see all of the current active awards at the NIH. And one of the really nice tools within Reporter is called Matchmaker. And with Matchmaker, you can utilize this tool to find potential program officers. You can find similar research to yours. So you can select Matchmaker, and there's a free form text field where you can basically copy and paste an abstract, your aims, and it will use text mining to determine similar applications that have been funded that are similar to yours. So you can see what's already kind of in that space. You can determine if you are presenting or you're going to be proposing work that's in its kind of own niche, or if there's already a lot funded in that area. And if you don't really know who to contact at the NIH, you can click on Program Official after you submit that text, And it uses the same text mining technology to tell you which program officers across the NIH have portfolios with similar types of research. So you can utilize that tool to kind of say, hey, Dr. Zahir, I found you on Matchmaker. It looks like you have a portfolio that might match my work. Could we set up a time to talk? So it's a great way to start out if you're not sure where to begin. Okay, so as you continue your journey here, you want to make sure that you foster your network. Your own friends may become your collaborators. As we all know, science can be a very small world when we're, within our own niches and talking to our network. So make sure that you don't burn any bridges. In the small world that it is, it's likely that you're going to come across similar individuals throughout your career. So, and just a side note about mentors, we don't all find good formal mentors. You don't always have to have a formal mentor. Mentors can be informal. They could be your family, your friends, your colleague, even your program officer could be an informal mentor in that regard. The best mentors really have your best interests in mind. They are successful in their own careers. They're interested in your success as well. They're honest with you, and they're good communicators with you. So, ask around and see around you who believes mentoring is important, and surround yourself with those who have similar values as you do. When you do open collaborations at any point in your career, I think it's important to be clear about that relationship and what's expected. You want to maximize your network. At the same time, you want to choose people that you respect. If you have an agreement on a joint project, make sure that you have in writing what's expected of which person or which lab to do what part of the project, who's going to be leading what. Talk about authorship early. If you talk about authorship early and decide early on an authorship agreement, then later on it can help to minimize any potential problems or miscommunications about, who the senior author is supposed to be or who the, primary author is supposed to be. And set clear boundaries with your collaborators. Also, be careful about former mentors as being your collaborators. And the only reason why I say this, because of course, former mentors can be fantastic at giving you guidance and advice. However, when you're submitting an application, like for those of you who are postdocs, for example, and getting ready to submit your own grants when you go to independence, you want to demonstrate that independence from your prior mentor. And so it's important to not be having your mentors continuously as like co-investigators on an R01 grant, for example. You need to establish that independence. And then when you're ready to set up your lab, or for those of you who have, I know many of you already have a lab, and you have a team that you're working with. This is important to keep in mind, even as you build and grow your team. Decide on who you need in your group. Do you need a technician? Do you know exactly what science you want to do and where a technician could really, really help with that? Do you need students on your team? Make sure that you have time dedicated to mentoring those students once before you bring them on board. And postdocs. One thing about having postdocs is you want to make sure that you can position them for independence when they leave your lab. So do you have enough projects to share ownership of ideas? Because if you're not as a mentor and as a head of a lab, if you're not yet at a position where you can then allow your postdoc to take part of that project with them as they become independent, then perhaps it's not yet a good time to bring on postdocs onto your team. So consider active recruiting, as you build your lab. The other thing to think about is your resources. So the physical resources. Do you need equipment? Do you need subjects or techniques to get where you want to go? When you think about equipment, can you share or buy secondhand equipment? Or are there public resources that you can utilize? Do you have animal models available? There might be some available through the NIH. It's worth looking into. It's also worth looking into checking in with your program officer. Perhaps they might know about different types of animal models or other resources that could be available for you. And techniques. Is there a class or another group that you could learn from for new techniques? Okay, additional funding. The diversity supplements. This is a really fantastic opportunity for those of you who have R01s in particular. So because the diversity supplements typically require that you have at least 2 years of funding left when you apply. And so the goal of the diversity supplement is to improve the diversity of the research workforce by supporting and recruiting students, postdocs, and eligible investigators from groups that are underrepresented in health-related research. There's a diversity supplement funding opportunity announcement that's offered through the NIH. And if you have questions about that, I really encourage you to contact your program officer. The other is administrative supplements in general. These are to be utilized to meet unforeseen increased costs within the scope of your approved award. In addition, let me give you an example of that. So if you had flooding in your laboratory, God forbid, you have flooding in your laboratory and your refrigerator is busted and you can't get it to work anymore. So you really need to buy a new refrigerator. Well, how are you going to pay for that? One of the ways that you can request money from the NIH, if you have an active award, is for an administrative supplement to pay for the cost of that refrigerator. And it may not, oftentimes it may not cover the entire cost. So you may need to get some funding as well, matching funding from your department, for example, to help out. But that's typically what administrative supplements are used for. But they're also used for opportunities to extend the research area of your project. I'll give you an example of that. So the National Institute of Aging, over the past several years, has received an increased budget from Congress, specifically around the area of Alzheimer's disease. And so the National Institute of Aging has issued an administrative supplement inviting applications to basically extend your research around the area of Alzheimer's. So collaborating with an Alzheimer's researcher to expand your current project. I mean, it has to be within scope, but that's just an idea to give you of how you can, different ways you can apply for administrative supplements. Another way to get additional funding is, of course, through private foundations. Just to expand a little bit on the research supplements to promote diversity. So these are administrative supplements to existing NIH grants. The R's, the P's, and the U's, so R01, P01, U01, and others. And this can be to support individuals from underrepresented groups at the high school level through to the faculty level. These supplements provide salary and fringe benefits, as well as funds for supplies and travel. It's important to note that the individual who you are requesting to be supported on your administrative supplement was not named on your awards. You're not supporting them, but maybe you want to recruit someone who's from an underrepresented group and you want to have them work on part of your R01 project. A great way to support them is to apply for a diversity supplement. So, and also this sets up mentoring relationships by developing these individual development plans with your trainees. And so typically 1 to 3 years of funding is provided to allow the supplement awardee to gain the research experience, the preliminary data, and other requirements to develop an application for other avenues of NIH funding. And really the diversity supplements can be a great feeder program excuse me, for our diversity fellowships and diversity career awards. So the link on the bottom of the slide, and the slides are available, it has these specific contacts at the different institutes of the NIH. Excuse me, that you can contact for applying for a diversity supplement. Okay, next I want to talk about the Common Fund. So the NIH Office of the Director supports what's called the Common Fund. And this is really to fund high risk, high reward research programs for outstanding scientists at all career stages. I mentioned earlier the Early Independence Award. So this is for exceptional junior scientists who want to bypass the postdoc and just launch directly into their independent research career. All of these different, there's 4 different opportunities here. They all have a deadline once a year. So be on the lookout for that if you're interested. There's the NIH Director's Pioneer Award. This is for scientists with outstanding records of creativity, pursuing pioneering approaches to major challenges. It's open to all career stages. And then there's the new NIH Director's New Innovator Award for exceptionally creative early career scientists proposing innovative high impact projects. This is for those of you who are still early stage investigators. Early stage investigator as defined by the NCI is within 10 years of your terminal degree. And then the NIH Director's Transformative Research Award for individuals or teams proposing groundbreaking, unconventional research with the potential to create new scientific paradigms. This is open to all career stages. So if you have questions about these programs, you can go to the website at the bottom of the page here and see who the program director is in charge of those programs. So the Common Fund was created to spur scientific leaps by taking substantial calculated research risks with commensurate payoffs. I didn't talk about the budgets that was on the previous slide. They are quite substantial. It supports scientists from diverse scientific areas, different institutions and backgrounds. We strongly encourage anyone to apply from any institution. Like I said, their funding opportunities are issued annually, and the deadlines are usually in August and September. The focus is on innovation and potential impact. And really, there's no preliminary data, and there's no detailed experimental plan needed. So take a look at those funding announcements if you're interested, so you can see exactly how the applications need to be put together. Of course, the underlying logic must be compelling. And so, you know, it's a really great program, and I encourage everyone to look into the Common Fund high risk, high reward research programs. Another program I wanted to make sure to tell you about is the NIH Loan Repayment Program. This is a fantastic program. I'm not sure that it's really widely known. But the NIH can help repay your student loans. It's up to $50,000 per year. What it requires is a 2-year research commitment. There's a couple of new programs this year. This is offered through most of the institutes at the NIH. It's run out of the NIH Office of the Director. There's actually a deadline coming up this year on November 18th, but there is an annual application deadline for this program. So the types of research that one can propose to conduct is clinical research, pediatric research, health disparities, research around contraception and infertility, looking at clinical disadvantaged backgrounds. And also this year, we're offering research in emerging areas critical to human health. So if you go to the LRP website, you can see what each of the institutes are particularly interested in. So this is really important for those of you who have eligible educational debt, and important for you who have your own laboratories and R01s. And so as you get students in your lab, and if they have any educational debt, this is an important program to let them know about. The success rates are pretty good for this program. I can't speak to all of the institutes, but I know that for the NCI specifically, last year, fiscal year, our success rate was close to 70% for this program. Okay, I need to get to Q&A now. So I am going to go very quickly for 2 minutes, if that's okay, Paula. And I just want to tell you the punchline of each slide. In this slide, talk to your program officer. Don't be afraid to reach out to them no matter what stage that you're at. But remember that if you've submitted an application, you need to talk to your scientific review officer until the time that you receive your summary statement. Then you can reach out to your program officer again. Any money-related questions, go to the grants management specialist usually. If you would like experience being a reviewer, there's an early career reviewer program at the NIH. It's intended for early career scientists like assistant professors. Check out the early career reviewer program. Another trick is to email any of the SROs who have review meetings in your area of expertise. Send them your bio sketch and let them know that you're interested in serving as an ad hoc reviewer so that you can gain experience. I wanted to mention for ESIs, I did mention this before, what an ESI is at the NIH. One important thing is that some institutes offer a bump in the pay line for ESIs. At the NCI specifically, last year, we were offering a 16th percentile pay line for R01s from ESIs, whereas for established investigators, it was the 11th percentile. The NIH is supporting early career scientists that have been impacted by COVID-19 in a number of ways. There's notices out there where we are supporting requests for extensions for those of you who have fellowships or career awards. There's also temporary extensions to the eligibility windows of K99 and R00 applications for 2 cycles. If you are still an ESI and your research productivity has been impacted by COVID-19, I encourage you to submit a request for extension to your ESI status. You can do this via the education section of your PI personal profile in ERA Commons. We are looking at these on a case-by-case basis. It's at the sole discretion of the NIH, but there's many other reasons why one would submit a request for an extension to their ESI status. And finally, I wanted to tell you about the NIH Anti-Harassment Policy. We are very serious about the anti-harassment, anti-sexual harassment, and other forms of harassment. And currently the NIH is demonstrating accountability and transparency, and we're clarifying expectations for institutions and investigators to ensure a safe workplace. We also offer clear channels of communication to the NIH. So if you have any concerns related to harassment affecting your NIH-funded research, you can tell the NIH about this in a confidential way through email or phone or a confidential web form. So please, learn the rules of the NIH. Your program officer can help. Cultivate relationships with the program staff. And if a program officer is not helpful, you can find one who is. Use the matchmaker tool to find another one. Take your progress report seriously and be a good colleague and a collaborator and be a good mentor. These are some of the secrets to success, and I'm sure you'll find your own. I wanted to give a special thanks to Dr. Anita Bechtold. She shared her previous slides from a previous talk, and many of these slides were adapted from her. So I just wanted to give her acknowledgement of that. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'm excited now to go to the Q&A.
Thank you. So we have a few minutes left for Q&A, so I'll try to get through these as quickly as possible. So regarding progress reports and submitting progress reports and the relationship with the PO. So if an individual submits a progress report and they have not had a response from the PO within 6 months, should they assume that everything's okay? Or what is the relationship, or what are the expectations in how we communicate with the POs regarding progress reports?
That's a really great question. So the POs are not required to give you feedback on your progress report. And many POs have different styles of how they might respond. I would say the best indication that your progress report was satisfactory and good to go is you receiving your notice of award. So essentially, you will receive your non-competing Type 5 award for your second or third year. And once you've received that award, then you know that everything was fine. Generally, the program officer will reach out to you and or your authorized organizational representative if there's questions.
Thank you. And a follow-up again about progress reports. So how do progress, or do they affect future funding decisions? Say, for example, you're wanting some supplemental funds for a new piece of equipment. Should you demonstrate that need within the progress report, or is there another way that you should demonstrate need for supplemental equipment or resources?
So that is one way to report any hurdles that you've had. You can describe the challenges that you've had in your progress report and your need. However, if you do need supplemental funds, you do have to formally apply for an administrative supplement. But a progress report is a fantastic way to communicate that information initially, and you can make sure that you follow up also with your program officer to make sure that an administrative supplement is the best way to proceed with requesting those funds.
Okay, and if you have a K award and you're not quite sure or don't think you're ready to be independent, is it common to apply for another K, or would you suggest something else, additional advice?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I don't really know the answer to that. I don't know if Paula, you have any guidance on that as well. I'd say, you certainly could apply for another K, but I would suggest talking to your program officer who could best guide you in terms of, because your program officer has really seen your progress and knows the most about your research. So it's hard for me to say, whether it would be appropriate to apply for another K. maybe you could look into another private foundation or something like that, where you could get some more kind of bridge funding until you're ready for your independence.
Good answer. Yeah, I would say the same thing, that the independence, there are other awards and mechanisms that may fit you. So talking with your mentor as well as your PO about next steps would be my advice also. So let me get maybe one more. So this is another for POs or question about progress reports. Is it okay or to request feedback on the submitted progress report from the PO? So again, what are the expectations about working with a PO once you have your first award? Will there be feedback on the progress report from the PO? Should I expect that?
Yeah, so I think if you want feedback, be sure to ask for it. There's no harm in asking your PO for feedback. They'll either tell you that, it looks great, or they may come back and ask you some questions as a follow-up. But I certainly wouldn't have an expectation that you're going to hear from your PO after you submit your progress report. Some POs, keep in mind, have pretty hefty portfolios, and so it's challenging for them to, respond and give feedback on every progress report. And so internally, we have a checklist that we have to run through for each of our progress reports and make sure that everything's satisfactory and reported correctly, like human subjects, for example, and other things. But otherwise, please, I just encourage you to contact your PO, but don't have expectations per se that they're going to reach out to you.
Well, thank you, Naz, and thank you, participants, for this informative session. Just very quickly, if you do have additional questions or your questions were not answered during this session, please visit our exhibit hall staff for a chat or a one-on-one opportunity. And you can always find contact information in the help section of our grants.nih.gov site. Finally, your feedback is very important. We ask you to take a moment to let us know what you thought by clicking on the session feedback button located with the description and presenters on the auditorium list of sessions. When you're completely done with the seminar, please also complete the overall survey form in the navigation bar at the top of the page. Thanks again for attending and have a great day.
Thank you so much.